At this moment, we would like to start the second part of the symposium. So, changes in student learning in post-COVID era. That's the title of the panel discussion, which is going to have three guest speakers and three presenters that we heard from earlier. So let me introduce the panelists. From your left on the stage, a professor of Graduate School of University of Tokyo, Professor Kitamura Yuto. Thank you. Nice to see all of you. Professor of Graduate School of Nagoya University, Professor Yamada Shoko. And Graduate School of Public Policy, University of Tokyo, Professor Suzuki Kan. And from Shinko Shubbansha Kerin Kan, GM of School Business Planning Department, Mr. Okamura Toshiki. From Uchida Yoko Institute for Education Research, Affiliate Professor of Nihon Fukushi University, Dr. Kageto Makoto. And from Shinshu University Faculty of Education, Associate Professor Tomoko Sachi. Yeah, Dr. Suzuki, Dr. Kitamura, Dr. Yamada, as expert members of the panel for EduPort project, they are giving various advice and guidance. During this panel discussion, we are taking comments and questions from the audience, so please do feel free to share your comments and questions. Now, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Kitamura at this moment. Dr. Kitamura, please. Professor Kitamura. Thank you. Can you hear me? Well, thank you for the ice break earlier. I hope the audience is relaxed. So let us begin the panel discussion. So the three of us, for the past few years, every year, we have been participating in these panel discussions this year as well. We're having a wonderful presentation session to report on the activities under the project. And the report so far, Edge report so far, and how the Edge report should be in the future. Although time is limited, we would like to discuss that. Those of you who've already presented, all three of us would like to participate in that discussion. Well, we heard three wonderful presentations about their activities. So for the activity reports given, I would like to turn to Professor Suzuki and Professor Yamada for comments. Professor Suzuki, please. If I may start with you. Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? All the three speakers who reported made excellent presentations. And they are engaging in a very important, huge amount of activities. I was able to see that through the presentations. So Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, Nepal, these were the countries covered. And in terms of education, these are challenging countries. And so we heard reports about their activities on site. That must have been difficult. Well, in an activity like this, you would set up an hypothesis, and usually the report at the end would say and conclude by saying that the hypothesis was tested and validated. But that was not the case in the presentations. There were many discoveries and surprises in the process of the activities undertaken by the three presenters. So the presentations were quite vivid. And so it was inspiring for me. And I had lots of learnings from the presentations. And so for EduPort, or on a broader, in a broader sense, for the country of Japan, because Japan has gone through the same process as these developing countries in the past 100 or 150 years. So the history of Japan's education was once again reminded by these reports. So there are many different countries in different stages of their development. And so given that, how can Japan collaborate with the people on the ground, on site in those developing countries? So we have to come back to the basics to ask that question of ourselves. And I think that was the gist of the presentations. For what purpose are we implementing EGIPORT? And for what are we collaborating with the people in developing countries? I think asking such questions is very significant. Well, we are talking about SDGs, COVID-19, the war in Ukraine. There are new circumstances that are developing around the world that we have to face. And so beyond national borders or across different disciplines, we have to collaborate. We can't do everything on our own, just in health. We have to collaborate with education, health, and across different sectors. And so in order to have such collaboration, the basics of math, arithmetics, the basic understanding of such subjects and the capabilities to apply such skills, of course, becomes crucial. And as Dr. Kageto said, well, teachers in some developing countries, after teaching at school, would become tutors in after school hours or teach at cram schools and so forth. That was the reality. And given that reality, how should we bring what we can offer? Well, several decades ago, however, in this country, we had a similar situation. So there are so many issues and so many aspects of the activities that were brought to the fore that I thought was important. And so I would like to express my heartfelt respect to the speakers and for them to engage in all those activities. Next, Dr. Yamada.
Excuse me. So as Suzuki Sensei said, each project was very powerful and there were a lot to learn from each of the presentations. So I think the time is limited. I cannot address each presentation. So I would like to focus on a common keyword that I observed. So this is called EduPort initiative and Japanese style education. What is Japanese style education? I would like to state some comments regarding that question. In the three presentations, there were critical observations and interactive subjective inquiry-based learning was mentioned. And authentic learning was mentioned. I think this is the characteristics of Japanese style education. But there is no clear modeling of the process, I assume. So promoting Japanese style education doesn't mean to force someone or a country to use one template. That is not the case. Because there is no such clear template. At the same time, critical observation and inquiry-based, authentic, subjective learning. This focuses on the ability that the learner would acquire. 21st century type of skills and problem-solving ability have been the hot topic, not only in Japan, but also in the Western countries. Learning abilities and behavioral change have become the stronger focus. That is the recent trend. And under such circumstances, behavioral change from Japanese style education is something we should share with the rest of the world. I think this is quite attractive. At the same time, Rather than the process of education, I think we are focusing on the outcome of learning. In that sense, in the 3 projects, I saw the utilization of ICT as a tool and teaching method and how you engage subjectively with those teaching methods. Such involvement as a process seemed to be very effective. And ultimately, the attitude of learners is important. And we are trying to evolve in that learning process, including the outcome. I think that is quite unique about EduPort. So I think I've used up my time. So related to other partnerships and other topics, I would like to come back to this later. Thank you.
ございます。
Professor Yamada, thank you. Professor Suzuki said that over the past century or century and a half, Japan has gone through a certain process. Developing countries today have to go through the same process, but within a much shorter period. And so in sociology, they are latecomers developing. There are benefits as well as disbenefits in coming late and have to do the same thing within a shorter period of time. And so, given that context, how can Japan engage? That's one of the important questions. And EduPort project is a project that forces you to think about that. And so, given how today's education is designed and given, as Professor Yamada said, how to define the learner, what should be the process of learning, the method of learning. And these questions are very much relevant and important. On top of that, we're having ed tech, ICT tools, new tools are being developed. So given that, how are we to define academic achievement and what does it mean to have rich learning experience? So those are some of the questions raised globally. And online, as we enter post-COVID era, how will learning change and what kind of contribution can EduPort make? We have received such questions already from online participants. So as we look toward post-COVID era, the changes happening to learning, well, we would like to look at that based on the experience so far in Japan. What should learning look like going forward? So let me ask Professor Suzuki and Professor Yamada, whichever would like to start. Professor Yamada, well, so it's me again. I was trying to take notes and I'm a bit surprised, but well, what I feel is that because of COVID-19, all 3 presenters, I believe, have pointed this out, but technically, we've had no choice but try to overcome the impediments to learning technically. So people who knew that there were problems, there were structural problems and impediments that existed institutionally. We had no choice but to try to overcome them because of COVID. So as I said, when we focus on learning, what is important is for the learner to learn, and the process could have been anything. But then conventionally, we have not been able to be very free or liberal about the process. But in post-COVID, the freedom of learning process and the freedom of having different sense of understanding and the way in which teachers engage proactively, freedom there. So diversification of processes of learning now have to be accepted, and that generates confusion as well as new possibilities, I think. So considering that, how can we translate them into tangible results? And I don't want to use the word model too much, but these are the different patterns that are possible. These are the components and elements that are crucial. So sorting them out and analyzing them, that's the role of the researchers like us. So the researchers and the educational institutions, learners and instructors, teachers, collaboration among these parties. There's potential there. There are also new need for that. I think that need is rising in the post-COVID era.
Thank you very much, Suzuki Sensei. Yes, as Yamada Sensei said, there was no choice but to promote remote online education or digital transformation of education. Well, they always have been challenges, but with COVID, we had to accelerate such efforts. This is not only the case in Japan, but in the countries that were presented today, I think they share the same situation. But having said that, online and face-to-face education, of course, they do have different advantages. And we have more options today. So we have more number of options. And to address challenges and targets, we need to integrate different channels. Know-how's there and ability to involve the others and organize things and motivation to address such challenges positively, including the faculty or the leaders in the educational field who are willing to support them. And maybe there are passive groups as well who are reluctant to address these challenges, but they have to anyway. So there is such gap. We have more number of options, but in utilizing those options to be more creative and make it more interesting, there are people who are motivated to do so, and there are people who aren't so much. And I think there will be a wider gap going forward. In fact, the important thing is process. In Japan, toward DX, digital transformation, it has been a critical topic, but the important thing is not if it will be a success or not. Track record is important, but rather among the faculty or the community with the students, they are working together, and such attitude is quite important for the sake of education. Well, in elementary school or middle school, there will be reluctant students, but there will always be others who will support them. The issue of ability, motivation, attitude, or intention, I think these things are gaining more importance. So the perspectives of learning that we used to think is important, maybe shifting towards maybe something more related to how the teachers are assessed. Thank you.
Well, Professor Yamada has provided an excellent summary. And based on that, Professor Suzuki, based on the needs on the ground, what's necessary, what's required, the importance of asking that question was pointed out. So given those two comments, so the three speakers who reported on their activities, any of you, if you have any comments, and online social cultural context differences, background differences, because there are those differences. What were the difficulties encountered? And what you learned in developing countries, how do you think you can translate that for something beneficial in Japan? So those are some of the questions raised online. So listening to the two professors' comments, learning is diversified, tools are changing, processes are changing, and the perspectives through which we look at learners' experiences are diversifying and changing. So, as engaged on the ground, what did you feel, and what are the insights or suggestions for Japanese education here in Japan? So, based on that, or based on the discussions that we just heard, any responses from any of the three speakers?
Well, we offer smart lecture, but it's not just about creating an environment for students to watch. That would motivate them to watch. And thinking while watching is also important. And how students watched those videos can also be recorded in smart lecture. For example, if they stop the video in the middle or at 2 times the speed, such things can be recorded as well in the system. That is one thing we would like the teachers to confirm. And I think it's important for them to be involved in the educational process of each student. In the Filipino public school, there were teachers who used videos very effectively in lessons, and they would give assignments that is related to the content of the video. So ICT was utilized effectively in their classes. And during the pandemic, children could not attend schools anymore. There were no face-to-face lessons. And students who already had the environment to watch the video could have access to those videos. So I don't think that the video was fully utilized by all the students. And there is a budget for teaching materials, but I think what is more important is how teachers interact or be involved in that learning process.
今のお話はですね、非常
Thank you very much. You pointed out something important. Actually, one of the online questions is, well, using AI, which is popular today, enhancing the skills of teachers in developing countries. Are there such approaches that can be taken? That was one of the questions. So as was mentioned, a proactive learning of student utilizing tools, you will be able to confirm that and track that. For each student, the teacher can be engaged individually using tools. So individual optimization is the key phrase today. But if you try to head toward that direction and try to pursue efficiencies only, you would end up being wrong. But rather than that, we can use this effectively, use tools effectively, like AI, to visualize the extent of learning on the part of the student. And Professor Yamada said that because of COVID, we were forced to adopt these. And but here in Japan, although that was the case, this is being used. And what Suzuki-san said is also important. Well, the more new tools are introduced, the greater the risks of gaps. And that was exactly the case in the Philippines, as was reported. So, anything else, please?
エリポート
So among the EduPort projects, there were 10 model schools. And in those model schools, Uchida Yoko has supported exchange between high school and university students, and the teachers in those schools were participants in that program. And so they have become the teachers of those schools, and they are interested and have understanding of the Japanese educational system, and they're also motivated for ICT use. And from Japan, elementary school, middle school, and high schools were connected. So we do a research on a daily basis, but also listen to the real voices from Cambodia to deepen our understanding of Cambodia, evolving from only what we can read on the textbooks, but shifting more to the real physical existence. And EFL, they have been teaching English for 10 years, but no one can speak English. And that is a common challenge that we face that we can use to deepen our dialogue. And in the second class of Wednesday, there are 2 Cambodian universities and 3 Japanese universities doing a class on the same theme. And we use metaverse to exchange opinions about today's class. I'm not sure what they're talking about in that metaverse space. Maybe they're talking about whether they are going out with someone, but I think such daily communication is going to be a great key going forward. And the performance of education can be utilized for peace education. So in classrooms and in networks or sometimes face-to-face, such a new educational development needs to be considered at this stage.
具体
Thank you very much. So your experience of a very concrete project, and I think your comments suggested future potential. So, Dr. Tomoka, well, what am I to say after 3 rounds of discussions? Well, I may be deviating from the discussions that we've had so far, but so changes in student learning and the richness of learning, what to think about that? Well, under COVID-19, I visited many schools and felt the following. Do we need schools? Do we need teachers? Do we really need education? Well, those were the questions that came to my mind looking at the schools. Well, under COVID, schools became hospitals and school functions had to stop. And some teachers were pleased because they could do lessons online and have side jobs. And education was granted before, it was always budgeted, but under COVID, people started to ask questions about the education itself. And here in Japan, that's the case. And in developing countries, it was more so the case. And so what we learned is, number one, sense of crisis. So in health education, all the Japanese teachers thought was that all they needed to do was to teach what's in the textbook. But learning from textbook can be done through AI and other tools. So in line with the situation surrounding children, how can you customize and create an opportunity for children to learn? That is what is required of teachers today. So who are we fighting against? Well, AI and non-educational sectors who are questioning the necessity of education. Do we really need to send children to schools? Well, we have to generate evidence to show that education and schools are necessary. What I thought was wonderful in the presentations is that well, they did many activities and came up with results, but they also collaborated with economic authorities, for example. Well, in schools, so for decades, we've said that children need to be taught the importance of hand washing. But I went to developing countries in remote areas, and people understood the importance of hand washing, and that's because the authorities were lined up. And so, with institutions and systems in place, some societies, countries follow. And so, to mobilize for the better, we have to generate evidence. What is questioned of us is what do we need to do and what do we need to leave? And in the Japanese context, Japanese teachers, when I visit schools, they are always surprised. Or rather, I'm always surprised to see such teachers being engaged in a broad range of activities. It's inspiring. So And that's because of the investment that we make in the educational industry. But in the process, we've had to discard some part. But I do hope that teachers will be able to concentrate in the areas that most count. And I think that was one of the learnings under COVID-19. Under COVID-19, the first 6 months, and I hope there's no official from MHLW today, but the speed at which notice is given from MHLW and the speed at which notice is given from MEXT, there was a lag between the two. And so schools have had to desperately think what to do to cope with COVID. The teachers were frantic. Well, under COVID, given the resources available, we were so confused. And actually, it's worse in developing countries. Given the constraint on resources and budget, teachers are left on their own devices to figure out what to do. So what Japan learned this time is, well, funding is not usually, not always available. And in order for education to survive, I think what is important is for us to showcase the importance of education and generate evidence.
でも大切な
Thank you so much. I think you pointed out some very important themes, especially competition with other sectors. I think this is something that we need to have a sense of urgency in addressing. But at the same time, we need to collaborate with other sectors too. So we need to be selective of such opportunities. That is what we need to consider seriously going forward. And this collaboration is one of the keywords that I had for this panel discussion. So we're in the second stage of EduPort. In the first stage, in different countries, we have gone through various initiatives, and many of them have been quite fruitful. But because they were separate efforts, there were no linkage between projects, even if they were carried out in the same country. So we can think about bringing successful cases to other countries or in different sectors, different type of actors like government, private, NGOs. These different actors can collaborate more. I believe these further collaborations will need to be achieved in the second stage. And listening to the comments from the three presenters, that is what I thought. And we would like to receive questions from the floor as well. And then we would like to summarize the session with Suzuki Sensei and Yamada Sensei regarding the future of EduPort. That's how I would like to proceed from now. So from the floor, are there any questions? Yes, please. Thank you. I'm Keita Takayama from Kyoto University. I think it was about 3 years ago. I participated in evaluation verification of EduPort, and we developed a report which is read by no one, technically. Back then, in the International Affairs Division of the MEXT, we interviewed the manager who used to be there when EduPort started. We asked that manager, what is Japanese style education? And the response was, I'm not sure. But that is also the reason of why we are doing this. We have this, what is called Japanese style education, and we would share that with the overseas. And if they look at the education of Japan, maybe we'll be able to define what is Japanese style education. That was the expectation, according to that manager, for this project. By sharing something from Japan, we would be able to deepen our understanding. That's how the manager explained. And 6 or 7 years have passed since then. And earlier, Yamada Sensei said you questioned yourself, what is Japanese style education? And I've got this feeling that we would not be able to define Japanese style education by the end of the symposium. And I think it is problematic that there is this atmosphere that we should not go too deep into that topic. And I think we should do something with this paradox. You often say Japanese style education is based on mathematics and arithmetic. And in the materials, it says Japanese style education in English, but we cannot fully explain what is Japanese style educational system. And then we may be criticized for not being able to convey the idea, or maybe it will be called a fraud. So what is Japanese style? I have a feeling that we need to have such discussion among ourselves, but what do you think? Thank you for your question. So I could respond, but I think I'd like to hand over to Yamada Sensei. Well, maybe I was ambiguous in my statement, but style, the word style, has the impression that it is a form of intervention and there is some clear definition, but I think that even if we try to look for this Japanese style, I don't think we'll be able to find it. We are trying to seek what is Japanese style in the outcome of our initiative, and that is really Japanese, I would say. We have this ideal vision for the learner, then we take different approaches to that end. I think that is very Japanese style. By thinking that we need to standardize everything, maybe this Japanese style uniqueness would be disappeared, and I think that is a concern. So Yamada Sensei's comment was a very important in a way that I think early childhood education is one of the typical examples. In preparation for schools, there's a checklist, a long checklist of what you should be able to do. In the Minister of Education of Canada, I talked with someone from the ministry, and they said they had a checklist of over 200 items, and even teachers don't know what they are checking. But in order to prepare for elementary school, they need to check off those items on the list as to skills and abilities. On the other hand, when we evaluate, we write a process how each student is living their daily lives and how they are learning. So it's descriptive versus checklist. They're completely different. But in the knowledge-based society today, there is more diversification. We have more children of immigrants, and we need to make them ready for their school education. So in the past, in Germany, Sweden, they used to have early childhood education close to that of Japan, and they've changed, but we haven't. So I think this is one way for Japan to retain its uniqueness. I think Yamada Sensei explained in a very easy to understand manner. And what Yamada Sensei explained, one of the examples would be what I just described. Takayama Sensei also made an important comment that it's true that we are letting Japanese style to be ambiguous, and that is not the good thing. So I'm not sure about the official statement of the MEXT, and I'm not representing the MEXT today, but we have to strike a good balance between intelligence, moral, and physical health. And we observe the development of children. That is one way of Japanese style. So as Tomokawa Sensei said earlier, teachers are so busy with non-teaching tasks, and this is maybe a negative Japanese style. So we're not saying that Japanese style is good in any case, but I think we do see such features of Japanese style education. Sorry, I spoke too much as a moderator, but I'd like to hand over now.
Well, just as an example, let me share with you one of the projects we are doing at my university. A research group at Nagoya University is looking at industrial laborers. Their problem-solving capabilities are measured under that project. So problem-solving capabilities, do we, it's not that we have a certain model of problems solving predefined. Well, the employers and the members of the society of that country, what do they expect as they recruit people? We interview that and try to understand that. And based on that, in light of that, what is the level and the kind of problem-solving capabilities do the workers have? And aside from whether our project is a Japanese project or not, so technology to take measurements, technology to teach, and so teacher training in order to form the right attitude. So process-related technology, I think, can be Japanese-style technology. That can be accepted. But these are the set of capabilities and competencies that you have to have. These are the processes that you definitely have to follow. Being free of such predetermined process and technologies is the attraction. Well, thank you very much for an interesting example. I think that was unique. So, Dr. Suzuki? Professor Suzuki? Well, listening to what Professor Takayama said, well, for the past 6 years and 7 years, we've been working hard under this project. So people who worked hard in the field, on the ground, oh, what were the surprises? What were the discoveries? What were the differences? I think we need to collect that data empirically. That's something that we should be doing under this project now that we've worked so hard on this project for the past 6 to 7 years. And I say so because of the following. Well, suppose there's a certain Japanese style education. Well, changes are happening still. A course of study tries to creatively destroy what was accepted traditionally in the 20th century. And we're invited to middle schools. And because the course of study is pretty new, we're hammered and criticized by teachers who embrace 20th type of approach. But after an hour or so of discussion, they understand. So there seems to be a lot of division and fragmentation among teachers here in Japan as well as to what they think is good. So in today's society, what has become a tacit knowledge, we need to formalize that and make it tangible. So what have we done? What have we left? And what are we adding? I think we need to revisit that and discuss that. And I think we're in the process of doing so. And so as we reflect on what we have done, so what are we accumulating, what are we leaving, and what are we adding? And based on that reflection, we should engage in collaboration with overseas. Now, as part of collaboration with overseas, I think we all will be able to clearly recognize what really is important, what needs to be left and what needs to be added. And so I would want Professor Takayama to be the project leader.
高山先生。
Thank you. So Takayama Sensei and Kikuchi Sensei from Otsuma University are also in the venue. So you said that the report is not read by anyone, but it is an incredible report. So I really recommend everyone to read it. And from next academic year and beyond, as Suzuki Sensei proposed, I would like Takayama Sensei to continue to verify the effectiveness. And if you are interested, please do take part. So today's panel discussion does not reach a certain conclusion, but I think we were able to identify what we need to focus on going forward. As a homework for the entire initiative, how should we think about Japanese style education that needs to be organized and presented? And at the same time, in schools, there are different know-hows, various knowledges accumulated, and I think there are gaps, difficulties, and awkwardness. So I think we first need to verify what is happening in that region. But the next step should be referring to such know-hows when thinking about Japanese education. I think that is a big objective of this undertaking. In that direction, we will move forward. This is going to be the end of this academic year, but from next year and beyond, I'm looking forward to discussing with you and collaborating with you. I apologize for speaking too much as a moderator. Because of that, we have gone over time, but I think it was a very meaningful session from which I had a lot to learn. So to the 5 panelists and Takayama Sensei, thank you so much. And please give a big round of applause for the panelists from the audience. And that concludes this panel discussion. Thank you very much. Kitamura Sensei, Yamada Sensei, Suzuki Sensei, Mr. Okamura, Kageto Sensei, Tomokawa Sensei, thank you so much for your contribution. With this, we would like to conclude the EduPort Symposium for academic year 2022. Thank you very much for your attendance once again. We are asking the audience to fill out a questionnaire. Your cooperation will be appreciated.